Hello, everyone. We are happy to have you here with us for our Family Services interview. My name is Kaylee Edwards, and I'm part of the Family Services team here at Davidson, and I'm going to be your host for today. Thank you for trusting us with your time and showing up for your community in this way. Before we dive into our session, I'm going to share a few housekeeping points so that everyone has an idea of what to expect during our session and how you can participate in ways meaningful for you. As mentioned during the sound check, if you wish to remain anonymous, please send a chat message to the host. That's me. I'll change your name to something like Parent A, and then once changed, I'll confirm that you're able to participate anonymously with a private message. Our session is intended to run for about 90 minutes today and has two main parts. We'll begin with the Director of Family Services interviewing our panelists for about an hour, and then we'll conclude with a half-hour mixer where you can meet and speak with other parents. We know that many families join the Young Scholar community to find connections, and we hope this gives you a chance to share experiences and find like-minded parents. This event is a Zoom meeting, so this means that attendees can turn on their cameras and use their microphones. Please remain muted during the first hour of our event. Once we head into breakout rooms for our mixer, please do turn on your video and audio to connect with other parents at that time. During that first hour, you can still chat with other families, though. Please use the chat function to introduce yourselves and connect with others. You can even change your name to reflect where you're from and the ages of your young scholars to make it easier to connect. Separate from the chat function, Zoom has the Q&A. This Q&A serves as a way to submit questions to our panelists and our Director of Family Services during our session today. Questions that are submitted to the chat function rather than the Q&A may be overlooked. And we want to answer your questions effectively, so we encourage you to add specifics about your situation. That includes information like the age, gender, and grade for your young scholar, their school environment, like public, private, online, or homeschool, and any impacting factors, current constraints, or guiding goals that you would like us to consider. You can submit your questions through the Q&A function anytime throughout the session. If we have any time before we head into breakout rooms, we will address questions during that time. We know that every question is important, but we also want to make sure that you have time to connect with one another. So if there's a question that y'all are particularly interested in having our panelists answer, you can upvote questions that you are particularly interested in by clicking on the thumbs up icon below each question. Another way to participate in our session is by commenting on other parent questions. Many families join Davidson in part to find a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of knowing that you aren't alone. So please comment on questions if you have a similar situation or you want to share some insight or encouragement with the question at hand. You can comment by clicking on the comment box next to each question. We are recording this event. The recording will be posted on the Davidson Member Community Platform, or DMC, within about a week. But text submitted to the chat and the Q&A functions are not included in the recording or shared on DMC. We hope you stay through to the end of our session today. At that point, you will be directed to our post-event survey. We really do value your feedback, and we use that survey to inform our programming moving forward. We would like to highlight that there's a lot of variability in the profoundly gifted and twice exceptional experience and community. In a group setting like this, some answers may not fully apply to your child or may not be as concrete as you'd hope. In our experience, what works for one young scholar may not work for another. Our goal is for you to be able to take some nuggets of information from the responses that align with your child, your family values, and your situation. This area is meant to be a safe space to ask questions. We recognize and respect that families have different goals and values. We feel honored to provide this session and to be part of your journey. Please remember to respect others during our session. Thank you. Without further ado, I'm going to turn the time over to Laurel Griffiths to get us started with our interview.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. I'm excited to have all of you here. I'm also excited in particular to welcome our panelists today. We're going to be talking about twice exceptionality and summer programs. Um, to start us off, we have three panelists joining us. I will give each of them a little time to introduce themselves, and then we will dive into questions. Hui, can we start with you?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. My name is Hui. It's a little hard to pronounce. It's Chinese, so I put a little how to pronounce my name in the in my name. I am a licensed psychologist, and I am also a school neuropsychologist. So day to day, my job is to provide testing or mental health support for many youth and including many gifted students. As my one important job that I also have on top of being a psychologist, that I am the admission director for Epsilon Camp. Epsilon Camp is a 2-week residential camp for students who are really passionate about math. We rotate campus every year. This coming 2026 summer, we're going to be in Utah. And so Epsilon is a little unique in the sense that the families attend camp with the children. So basically, you will be assigned a dorm room where you and your child will be staying in that dorm room. And in the morning, when class starts, you will be dropping off your child, to you're living on this university campus. You will drop them off to the math classes or activities, and simultaneously, we also have a parent program where we parents can form a community, connect. We talk about things like social emotional growth, resources, how to homeschool, early college options, all the variety of of topics that would be of interest for these parents. But most importantly, we're helping them to form a community, and so you live together for 2 weeks and you get to know each other. And one thing about Epsilon is that you keep coming back for 2 to 5 years. So basically, your kids keep coming back to this camp until they are 12 and age out of the camp. So our camp ages from 7 to 12. Yeah, so that's about Epsilon. I can't wait to
Thank,
hear from, the other summer programs.
thank you so much, Hui. Nicole, can we go over to you?
Sure. My name is Nicole Fugit, and I'm a senior program manager at the Institute for Educational Advancement, which is a nonprofit that works with gifted and advanced kids across the country through all sorts of different programs. So the one that we're specifically here to talk about today is the UNASA Summer Camp. That one is our program that focuses on helping gifted kids find balance through all parts of who they are. So it is away from parents, unplugged for a week. And we have two locations each summer, one in Colorado and one in Michigan. And kids travel from all over the country to join us there. And they're age 10 to 16. And then we'll get more into that. But also under my purview is the Academy Enrichment Program, mostly on site here in Pasadena, California, but also online. And we have some high school opportunities and parent services as well that I'm involved with. So all sorts of different things. And I've been with the organization since I was a teacher in 2016 and joined the staff in 2017. So going on 10 years. And I just love working with gifted and 2E kids.
Thank you. And Gabrielle?
Hi, I'm Gabrielle or Gabby. Um, I am the summer programs manager for Davidson summer programs with Davidson Institute. And so I get a chance to work with young scholars ages 8 to 11 and 11 to 13. We host 4 5-day sessions over the course of the summer, and we're located in Reno, Nevada. So students kind of get that residential dorm life fun experience on the campus while also there's an academic focus and then traditional fun summer camp aspects as well. And kind of similar to other camps, we're fully connected and we're a week long. So students get a chance to just come and be around like-minded peers for the week while also getting a chance to work with Davidson Academy instructors, which is pretty fun too.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, let's dive into questions. The first one, very straightforward. What are the benefits you find for camp for twice exceptional students? Let's go in the opposite order. Gabby, can we start with you?
Of course. Some of the, benefits that come to mind include, you know, some of the goals of camp anyway. So like gaining confidence in environments that are outside of typical routines, like that brings a lot of flexibility that campers are able to work on that they don't necessarily get a lot of experience with. And then with that, getting a chance to strengthen some of those executive functioning skills like time management, organization, emotional regulation, and task switching. And so, like I mentioned, camp the goal of camp is to have a safe space for students to learn and grow. And so when they're in spaces where they get to foster independence and resilience, like in an environment with staff deliberately there to help support them through those in a lower stake situation than maybe like what you're used to at school or at home and other various things, there's a lot of benefit that comes from that.
Thank you. Nicole, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just some things to add to that. I feel like I mean all of our camps are so different, but I think anything that kind of breaks up the typical routine and gives some opportunity to adjust to a new routine is really helpful for all kids, but especially 2E kids. Uh, Maybe they'll during that time they're learning to use technology differently. At UNASA they're fully unplugged, no technology at all, but I'm sure even at all of these whatever camp it is, it's going to be different than what they would have access to at home and in school. Independence from family and just learning how to connect with different groups than they're like plugged into in their normal lives. And yeah, and also as Gabrielle said, the executive functioning skills, adjusting to a new routine. I'm going to swim in the afternoon. What does that mean? I need to have in my backpack when I leave my room for the day. Things like that. That it's different from just the day-to-day school routine, and it's great practice, and especially with the support of a staff, like you said, that can help guide and coach on those things without leaving them to figure it out on their own, but coaching them in that right direction.
Thank you. Hui?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything that you guys said. I think one of the unique things about Epsilon is that we also teach academics. Actually, I think we are one of the only camps that teach academics. I think this can actually be helpful to, many 2E and gifted students in a way that we're actually, challenging you. We are not questioning if you can do this. We're not underestimating your ability. We are teaching you the materials that accurately like challenge you or stimulate you. And a lot of times students can feel seen and heard at camp. That for once, I don't have to explain to you what I am able to do. You can see that right away. And that also create a sense of belonging. A lot of kids come to camp, they're like, oh my God, I thought I was the only one who is so passionate about math. And turns out I'm not by myself. Like there are other people like me. How incredible. And I think another thing is that for parents too, right? You are with your child every day. You're providing that. You're very closely involved in the day-to-day, life of your child. You're supporting their routine and everything. But maybe once in a while, you can step back and see and come to observe from a sideline and see what they can actually do. And sometimes they can actually surprise you. And sometimes, right, I'm not gonna say that camp is gonna be a smooth ride, right? So there will be problems or challenges, but it's also important for the child and the parents to know that when you're in a difficult situation, when you have problems, which there will be problems, that it is solvable and then you can overcome it, right? So not all crises are gonna end as a disaster. So you're gonna work with the camp, and you gradually learn like actually when things don't work out the first time, it's fine. It's totally okay. I can overcome that. I can deal with that.
Yeah, and I think that brings it full circle, right? Back to the gaining confidence that Gabrielle was talking about, right? Like when you meet these challenges in unfamiliar environments and you see like, oh, I can actually do this, right? That huge confidence boost. And doing it in a community of peers where other people are all facing the similar challenges and rising to the occasion. And we've been talking here about like what they can build in camp, but also we know that our wonderful campers bring things to camp, right? Perhaps thinking back to a camper that you really connected with, what talents or strengths do you see twice exceptional kids bringing to the camp community? Nicole, can we start with you this time?
Sure. Yeah, I think it's funny that you were just saying, Hui, about the finding the common interests, because I think that that's what I was going to talk about here is it creates such a beautiful, accepting community that I find that 2E kids can often look past, where you come from or age or any other barriers, and it's more based on interest and they're hungry for that belonging and connection often. So I think it kind of feels like just a cheat code to a really beautiful community to have 2E kids in the mix at camp. And I can think of one specific instance where it was one of the last nights at camp, and I looked over and I didn't recognize a kid, and it was because he was down on his knees and because he was about 6 feet tall and he was talking to one of our youngest campers. So it was our 16-year-old camper and our 10-year-old camper. And it didn't compute in my brain of who it would be that at that height looking like that. And I walked past them and they were talking about all this complex, quantum chemistry, science stuff. And the older camper, at other camps, you might not see a 16-year-old talking to a 10-year-old. And I thought it was just so beautiful that they're connecting about that. And I think, there's so much more that we could go on, but I think that transparency and openness to connection is really cool. And those special interests just add so much quirkiness and fun to the group.
Hui, do you want to add any thoughts
Yeah, I
there?
agree with all of that. And at camp we do a lot of exploratory, problems where we have a lot of, conversations or discussions. And some of the 2E students, and they are kind of learn things from a different angle or different perspective, and they would kind of contribute ideas that would be enriching for the entire camp. And so another example would be, so originally, like, a few years back, we had some students who were struggling at that time with emotional regulation. So at that time, we actually thought about, like maybe we should get someone with expertise in psychology. So starting, a few years back, we started to hire this a person who has a psychology background, who has expertise in both, emotional support, emotional regulation, as well as behavior intervention. And when we brought this person on campus, well, we realized that it's not just the 2E kids that would really, appreciate this person's expertise. The entire camp would also benefit, including our counselor and faculty, would also benefit from this person. So over the years, as we work hard to try to accommodate 2E student or their needs, it turns out that our whole camp becomes a better and more inclusive camp. And we're really thinking about things that turns out are beneficial for the entire community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gabrielle?
Just to, piggyback off of what you both said, that was already amazing. I think when one of the, strengths and talents that I think of is also like perspective taking and adding a lot of patience into the mix in terms of, you know, maybe working with a 2E camper to work on that, process of like pausing and thinking of like what's the other story while also inherently teaching that for other people too. And that's how you form the connections that they're maybe not typically used to having on the day-to-day during school. But along with that, I would also say like empathy, teamwork, and kindness. I think, with any camper at DSP specifically, especially like 2E campers, in general, kids are really smart and naturally very kind. And so they're very perceptive to like the subtleties of, someone struggling or maybe encountering a challenging moment. And it's really cool to be able to take a step back as maybe, one of the leaders who's used to having to jump in and help guide something when campers are able to help facilitate that connection and working through those situations for one another in an unprompted way that inherently, adds to our overall camp community of inclusion and valuing lots of different differences throughout the week. So it's really cool to see that. And then in some of the experiences that I was thinking through, it's, you have the moments that happen, in the moment, but it's also really cool to see the campers who return year after year who were once in a position of having to coach through that a little bit, and then they're the ones helping create that community with other people too. Super cool to see.
Mhm.
Um, and this brings us perhaps naturally to the question of like, how do we know, right? Like we've talked about all these great strengths and what they can bring, but how do we know if a twice exceptional kid is ready for camp? Both like a family camp or a day camp where the parents are also going to be there to support them, or a sleepaway camp like UNASA or Davidson's programs. Um, Gabrielle, do you want to start with this one?
Sure. This is a really important question that we end up getting tons of emails and phone calls on in the fall and, even during the spring where they're already looking towards the next summer of wanting to gather information to help best prepare their child. And so for Davidson Summer Program specifically, we have a list of essential functions that we more or less share with families that campers need to be able to meet in order to attend the camps. And obviously, the ways that they meet them look very different depending on the child. But since we are residential, it includes things like being away from home and out of contact with family members for the duration, sharing a room with roommates and being a part of a residential community, as well as getting, more shorter hours of sleep because everyone knows that camp brings this level of excitement that sometimes they just can't, get down at night to get some rest. But along with that, we get at, is your child able to take direction from adults other than their typical caregivers and teachers? Are they able to ask for help and are they able to operate independently under supportive supervision in regards to like self-care things? So like hygiene, meal selection, and all of that. And by no means is the expectation that campers have attended camp before. Like we all start somewhere. But with these questions, we're able to guide families in looking at ways that they meet these essential functions. So, like, is your child a part of a sports team or are they in robotics at school and they're able to, work with adults in that area? In moments of dysregulation, like what tips and tricks do you utilize with them to help them get through that moment, but also regulate at a baseline? And then, in addition to that, at the end of the day, one of the biggest indicators is if they're excited for the experience, right? So if you're involving them in the research process and sharing the information with them that you're learning, and once you're enrolled, are you involving them in the preparation process as well? Like packing clothes, reviewing the schedule with them. There are lots of resources that I'm sure all three of our camps list on the public website that families can help utilize in discerning if they're ready for the camp experience.
Nicole, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we have a very similar list. So that's, yeah, and I completely agree that buy-in goes such a long way. And, I didn't mention this, but the academy program here in Pasadena, we also have a day camp. So I'll speak mostly to the sleepaway aspect, but I think all the things I'll mention to a lesser degree apply to day camp. Maybe there's a little bit more wiggle room, but um, I think that buy-in and that the camper is excited is really, goes so far. And I think, we know that even neurotypical children get anxious. And, a lot of our 2E kids might get dysregulated by things that happen at camp. It's a lot of stimuli and newness and transitions. But I think to know that they're ready is knowing that at least, you feel confident that that dysregulation wouldn't lead to anything that would break the camp's code of conduct. So I think that is a good line to focus on of, okay, they get dysregulated if that leads to things like running away or, violence or anything aggressive, even if it just kind of appears aggressive and isn't actually hurting anyone. That is something to consider and work on regulation techniques and tips and tricks and working with the camp to see, okay, maybe we can have a secret code for if they need to get away and get away from everyone. Uh, they should know that resorting to just running is not the answer. We have a secret code with the staff to give them that space, or they feel like something's building, let's give them that space. And I know at UNASA we're super open to that because we want to be open to everyone, but we also want everyone who else is there to feel safe. And
Mhm.
uh, with all of our empaths in the room, I think sometimes when kids are having a really hard time, it can change the vibe overall. So it's for everyone's benefit that the campers are ready. And that doesn't mean that they're not going to be homesick. They're not going to be anxious. They're not going to get dysregulated because that will happen to a large proportion of the campers, but it's what those coping mechanisms are and them knowing those cues in themselves, even and also being able to recognize cues like hunger and thirst, and maybe I just need to take a nap or, take a shower. All of those different cues are helpful to work on before going to camp.
Mm-hmm. Hui?
Great, great. I was actually a special ed teacher before I became a psychologist. So in special education, there are a lot of summer camps that are designed for students with different needs, right? So no matter what kind of needs or how high needs or low, there is a summer camp for you. So it's not really about, is your kid ready for camp? Is that, are they ready for what type of camp, right? If, the camp provide this amount of support and your need is here, maybe that's not the camp to go. But if there's a camp that provide more support, we've seen kids with, profound need, are able to found a camp that fit their needs. It just depends on, whether, this particular camp meets your child's needs. In Epsilon, at Epsilon, that would be a good fit for a student who can meet their parents. Like you get to see your child, during breakfast, then you drop them off, and then after class, you pick them up. So you would get to see them, and if your child still needs like help getting dressed, or needs some help going to sleep. And we serve very young campers, right? Our campers are like 7 to 12, right? Some of them are very young. So you have that opportunity to, kind of talk to them afterwards, help them, with dinner and going to sleep and all that. But in the meantime, they still needs to be in class independently, right? You wouldn't be able to kind of visit the class, that they needs to be in class for 6 hours of the day. And we do have multiple layers of support, right? We train all of our staff about, twice exceptionality or profoundly giftedness and all these topics that has happened before camp, that they are all trained. That's like a baseline training for everybody. In addition, we have the camp counselor who I said that has the expertise. We also have, floating counselors who could take a child out for a walk when needed, or when they need adult support to co-regulate when they're, regulating their strong emotions. All of that plays. However, we would not be able to support a child who, for example, needs one-on-one support all the time. But there will be other camps that would be able to provide that support. So it's really about, knowing where your child is, and helping them find that right level of support.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it sounds like all of you are also saying like be communicative with the staff, right? And like if you know what helps in certain situations, share that so that the staff can't is aware and can integrate that and can also come back to you if there is something that like your child needs that this camp wouldn't be able to provide, then you know that before they go to camp, right?
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
Um and that gets kind of to my next question. So we talked about how do you know if your kid's ready, but how do you know if you, the parent, are ready to send your twice exceptional student off to camp? Hui, I mean,
Oh,
I
oh,
know you,
I love this question,
okay.
Laura. Sometimes I feel it, right, as parents of, kids who are, they're all kind of two-y or not, they're kind of all little quirky and they have their own personality and all that. And all of us, or a lot of us, have not so positive experience with schools, right? And it's a lot of times when problem arise, it's almost like feels very alarming to us. It's like,
Mhm.
oh my God, there's going to be another disaster or crisis waiting for me. And this is all kind of, not going to turn out very well. So when something happens, right, even, maybe a camp called you about your child's problem. Actually, the camp calls a lot of people, right? Your child is not the only one we're calling, but because of all these past negative experience you have with, educational institutions, all these single, little problems that becomes like very alarming. You're like, oh my God, now it's turning to be a disaster. But actually, nobody attends camp as a 100% smooth ride. Everybody is going to experience some challenges. That's the point of why you're sending them to camp, right? Like that you you want them to experience challenges. So when the camp call you, when we try to contact you, we're actually just trying to work things out. We're trying to talk to you so that we can solve this problem and move past that. And over that, we learn something new. The camp learns something new, and you learn something new, and your child learns something new. So I think it's as a parent, do you feel comfortable to let go a little bit and let the camp do their job, right? That would be one thing. Another thing I think would be like, are you willing to let your child experience some struggle, right? When they're feeling frustrated, hey, maybe it's okay to be frustrated a little bit so that you can learn how to deal with that, right? You have permission to feel upset about things, and we are here with you. We're not here to just shut that down and quickly make you a happy person, right? No, we're there to. We see you, we hear you. We know this is upsetting, and you are allowed to be upset. And I'm here, right here with you. Do you need a hug? Do you need to talk about it? We're here. But the thing is that we have to be allowed to feel these emotions to learn how to deal with it. And as parents, I think sometimes we have to be a little hands off and let the kids and the camp, figure things out with the supportive adults around them.
Thank you. Gabrielle?
That was amazing. And I would just add on to that, the messaging your child receives about camp starts at home. So we like to talk a lot about being cognizant of any anxieties you may be feeling and how that comes across to them because we want to set them up for an experience where they feel that they can confidently navigate this. Like you said, there's always things that you're going to encounter. That's where that resilience piece comes in as a parent and a camper. But, being conscious of that and, doing some self-reflection of I've had conversations with parents in the past who they talk about, I ask the questions to see if like this is a good fit for their camper. And it sounds like it's going to be a great fit, but there's that anxiety of sending them to camp for the first time. So you also want to be aware of, not wanting to limit any experiences, excuse me, that can benefit them in the long run. In addition to that, I also find that this always soothes parents on the phone too of I would recommend inquiring about what communication looks like between the camp and parents during the week. So, since we are a residential program, it's fully connected, so students aren't permitted to bring any electronic devices. However, we send nightly newsletters, we have a whole photo album set up, and in general, we like to lead with the motto of no news is good news. However, we partner with families as needed throughout the week, like you were saying, Hui, of you're not the only person getting called. We like to call to, share some observations or things that we're navigating to get some more tips and tricks. So we'll reach out when needed. But other than that, I think I agree to what you were saying. Parents are unfortunately used to the challenging advocacy that they have to do at school and sometimes forget that like we love camp and we love leading camp and we have lots of tools in our toolboxes that we can go off of in addition to preparing you for that transition as well.
Nicole?
Yeah, that hits on a lot of what I was going to share. I was going to talk about knowing what communication will look like throughout the week as well. And just to add something onto that, I think like we, the camp, don't take it for granted that you're trusting your child with us for the week. And I think we all just need to, like you said, trust each other that we are all on the same team of trying to support the camper. And the goal is have them have a successful time at camp. So, if we do reach out and, for example, if it's about homesickness, it helps sometimes if we can touch base ahead of time before passing along a message from you to the camper about, you know, even if you're feeling upset by that or, you wish you could just scoop them up and take them home. I think the goal is always encouragement, help them focus on the next thing that's coming that they can be excited about and tell them how proud you are of them for that independent step that they've taken to go to camp. And sometimes they do end up needing to go home early, but that is pretty rare. And I guess it does take some strength as a parent to even though if you're feeling inside, oh, I just want to go get them, try your very best to give them that little nudge, some encouragement to make it through successfully, and trust the camp that will know if it's time to make a bigger decision than that. Yeah, I think that's most of what I was going to say on that one. And yeah, no news is good news, but also hearing things isn't always bad. I've started a lot of calls with everything's fine, I promise. I just had this one question about, this medication or about, their nighttime routine or something small. But most of the time, no news means they're doing just fine.
One of the other things that I think fits with a lot of what you've all shared, that we share with in family services, is sometimes it's helpful as parents to plan something for yourself while your child is at camp, so that you have something to look forward to as
Mhm.
well. And if you're both doing different things, and then like planning, like when you pick them up or the day after you get home, like a special dinner or something like that, where you just share like both of your experiences in this week apart. And uh, that can get through to some of the homesickness of like, look at this is coming up. And also like the messaging leading up to camp of keeping it positive of like, oh, I'm really excited that you're going to do this, and I'm really excited that I'm going to do this. So that's one thing that we've found other families have found helpful, if, especially that first time away to camp, having some activity for yourself to do to keep you busy. um, um, so you've all spoken about this to a certain extent, but a direct question. How does your camp, what does your camp do to support and accommodate twice exceptional kids? Nicole, can we start with you?
Sure. We have a pretty high percentage of 2E kids. I think just for actual formally identified, it's nearly half. I would say, some are often in the process of getting that formal identification, so it's probably realistically higher than that. Um, I mean, one thing I guess particular to UNASA that um, others might not talk about is we do a lot of mindfulness that's really geared to the gifted and 2E mind at our camp. So that is a big part of what UNASA is helping gifted kids quiet their minds and befriend their brains that often just are throwing things at them constantly and, giving them skewed messages about what's going on around them. So one thing we do is guided imagery so that rather than trying to quiet their minds, because that's an impossible task with how much is going on, it's replacing, using those strong imaginations for good and harnessing that power that their minds have to find some safe spaces that they can return to when things get tough. So that's something that we do daily at camp. Um, to we find it's just really powerful for 2B kids. So that's one thing. We also talked about this a little bit, but all that information that's shared by parents is so useful, and definitely if something works, include it, because we create camper bios for every camper that our counselors and staff all review ahead of time. And we only get them for 1 week, and once they're with us, we have them. So it's not like we get to, go home for a day and reflect on how things went and then go back. They're with us. So having that information ahead of time helps us make the most of the time that we do have with the campers, and having those tips and tricks listed and provided to our staff really helps. And then another great thing is that we have all of our counselors are, or at least most years, are former UNASA campers. So they have been in the shoes of the campers. They have often gone through the same types of things themselves. Many of our counselors are 2E. Many of even our adult fellows, kind of like the mentors of camp, are 2E themselves. So we're just so lucky in that regard to have that built into the program, to have that mentorship aspect and those experts, not just from a kind of more intellectual perspective, but an actual personal perspective on what works. And, also many licensed psychologists on our staff as well to help with that regulation and individualized attention as needed. Uh, yeah, and we're also able to accommodate things like um, safe foods being available. We have a really great access to uh, medication if that's part of your plan. And all of our team is just has the kind of hard skills for being a psychologist or nurses, and then also lots of soft skills for working with 2E kids. So we're just yeah, we've got an awesome team, and we also review the schedule every morning. So even though there's some mystery involved, the campers know a little bit about what's coming for the day. I feel like there's so much more than that, but that's a start.
Thank you, Hui.
Yeah, everything Nicole said was so great. I think one thing that I want to start talking about first is that actually coming to camp, a lot of the behavior, behaviors are shaped by the environment, right? When children are in the right environment, they actually naturally they would decrease the probability of a problematic behavior, so-called problematic behavior, arise. So, imagine if this kid who has ADHD and they're sitting in a class and they're not being challenged, right? What do? They're gonna doodle and they're gonna, chat with their neighbors, where they are gonna call out answers without raising their questions. But when they come to a camp experience where they are being properly challenged and the environment is designed for them, they're not going to have the time to doodle because they are studying something that is highly interesting to them, and they are going to be very engaged because this is the right content, the right environment for them. That being said, problem also occur. There are other challenges that we need to pay attention to. So when we talk about emotional regulation issues or so-called behavior problems, right? 90% of our effort actually is putting into preventing those from happening in the first place. And 10% is to kind of, putting out the fire when, after they happen. So how do we prevent that, right? So that means we are setting up a structure or environment that are good for everybody, including kids who are 2E or not 2E. There is a concept in education called universal design for learning. Right. So you all see the cartoon where, people are trying to clear up the staircase and there's this kid on wheelchair trying to get through the ramp. And then the janitorial staff will be like, I have to clean up the stairs. So, and then for these kids to go in, and then I clear up the ramp. But people are saying, actually, if you clear up the ramp, everybody can go through the ramp, right? So based on this, we actually our camp, that's why I said the 2E kids make our camp a better place. Because when we are thinking about different types of learners, we actually design a system, a structure that works for everybody. For example, in our instructional design, we are thinking about kids who learn visually, kids who needs hands-on activities, kids needs to verbalize things versus kids need to write things down. And all of these forms are incorporated in the instruction. And we also create, something called office hour, where, traditionally, how do you show your teacher that you have learned the math? You finish your homework and you submit it. But kids, you can also come to office hours and talk to the instructor, right? By having conversations, discussions. That's a very different way of showing that you have understood the work, or you have questions that the faculty can help you, learn a little bit more or help you resolve, right? So with all of these structure in place, we are able to create a camp environment that's good for everybody. But I want to echo what Nicole had said, is that it's just really important for us to know ahead of time what your child might be like or what their needs are so that we can plan ahead, right? We do a lot of planning ahead of time, like who to pair with who in a group, right? Which counselor would be a better fit for this group? Does this child needs an individualized, schedule? Do I need to tell the counselor to warn this child when changes are going to happen, right? So if you let us know what your child is going to need ahead of time, we can think ahead of time and put that structure in place. Yeah.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
I would just echo a lot of what Nicole and Clay said. I found that over the years, as we, you know, work on trying to get that information ahead of time, we've, had to switch tactics up by, maybe asking families more direct questions to kind of help get that information out. And so in the springtime, we formally release our forms and documents for enrolled families to complete. And, it ranges from health history to, mesh to like dorm life surveys and everything. So we can collect all of this information to help set them up for success as much as we can before. But we do have a form that like gets to know your camper. So it's like, what are their strengths? What are their interests? What do moments of dysregulation look like? And what tips do you use? And then there's a space to share any formal or informal diagnoses that your camper may have so that we can utilize that preemptively. And then we take that information and we like to follow up with parents as needed through a phone call before camp even starts to start the connection piece there so that when we're calling you during summer, it's not this like big scary thing. It's us including you in the process. And like Nicole has mentioned before, very rarely does it happen, but sometimes, unfortunately, we do have to send a camper home. But that is all with the best intention of wanting to still set them up for success. And sometimes it very rarely looks like that. But all of that information helps us make informed decisions. And so other accommodations and support in the past has been like, we have campers bring their ear defenders, if for that to help them. And, for some of our more ADHD campers, like visual aids of their morning and evening routines so that they can follow along with. And then just to speak to another point that was already brought up, like we have a lot of accommodations and supports like built into the foundation of our programming. And so a lot of that looks like, visual aids for schedules on the dorm floor and in our main building so that our program assistants can, have their small group and stop by the schedule for the students who like need an idea of what's happening. And then for the students who maybe like get overwhelmed to know all that's happening, we can make that decision, but we have the aid there that's helpful regardless. In addition to that, we have designated quiet spaces set up so that if their room is a little too loud, they can go to this other space to have a moment to breathe or take a break. Uh, Time built into the day throughout the schedule to kind of like get outside and move some energy, especially before and after longer periods of focus, like our academics and things like that. And then, transition reminders are huge for us, as I'm sure it is for all the both camps here and then lots of camps. So setting counselors up to be training them to be prepared of like it is unrealistic to expect a 60-second countdown one time and then be moving to this next place like immediately. That's just not the nature of working with kids, especially gifted kids, and then especially 2E kids. Like we've all been there where even sometimes a 10-minute warning doesn't feel like enough time. But if we can start to involve those earlier and earlier while also prepping them for what the schedule looks like, they'll have an idea, a rational explanation, and clear next steps for the impact and the reasoning for why we need to get moving or go in a certain route in those conversations that we have with them.
Thank you for all of that. And Hui, I know you've already spoken to this a little bit, so I'm going to call on you first for this one. But how do you know if a particular camp is going to be a good fit for a specific child?
Right, that's an important question. I think that's parents have. I would encourage families to talk to the camp,
Mhm.
read through their material, talk to the camp, and also talk to other families who have attended the camp.
Mhm.
I know it's a little. I want to acknowledge that some camps, their admission to the camp is competitive.
Mhm.
And that is a very real situation. And it's very unfortunate that that happens. For us like young people, they should be able to go to, but anyways, there are limited spots. So I feel like that situation had prevented many families from trying to be open in when they're inquiring about the camp with the fear that if the camp knows about my child his needs, would they just say no to them? And I acknowledge that that fear is extremely real. And I think there are camps out there who would actually reject a camper who they think might have needs that's higher than or the different from another learner. So I want to actually think that there are actually two entry point where you can communicate with the camp. One is when you submit an application. And the other one is the other time is after your child is admitted and before you register for the camp. I don't think there's any camp out there, would say like after your child is admitted and now you're having this conversation with camp about how to support my child's needs, and they will say like, actually, we don't want you anymore, right? So I think it's really important. Like I said, a lot of the planning happens ahead of time. It's just really helpful if you communicate to the camp ahead of time. I would also say though, if you talk to a camp about your child's needs, whether they're being 2E or something, and they're very resistant in answering that question, or they're very reluctant, that is actually a sign that maybe that's not appropriate camp for your child, and maybe you don't want to push it. Right. So it's not going to end up very well, if you kind of pretend your child knows all the things or don't need those kind of support. And rest assured, nowadays there are a lot of resources, a lot of camps that are out there, and they're going to be one that meets your child's need at this stage. And if your child attend that camp with a higher support for a couple of years, maybe they're then ready for this other camp that you're eyeing for, right? I just kind of
Yeah,
want to start with that. Yeah.
yeah. Nicole?
Yeah, I think starting, to pick a camp, starting with what the student wants and is interested in is always helpful. Starting from that place, not starting with that deficit mentality and starting instead with, okay, what are you excited to do this summer? What would give you that push to take this independent step? And then, once you have some options and have that figured out, thinking about where the sticking points are and where dysregulation happens in your normal day-to-day life and asking the camp about those moments. So, what are meal times like? Because that seems to bring some things up in my household. Or, is there a lot of sitting sitting still because that's difficult for them at school? You think things like that, and those focused questions can really be helpful because it's easy to say, oh yeah, well, we'll take care of them, it'll be great. But thinking about those specific moments that you know your child best, and often we don't know them yet before they come to camp. So uh, having the parents be the experts and letting us know about what those moments might be, and what to look out for, and giving the camp a chance to be honest about how they accommodate kids in those types of situations.
Gabrielle?
I would also just add on to the other many great suggestions. Um, Part of it too, you bring up a good point, Nicole, of there are lots of traditional summer camps of like outdoorsy, like you're on campgrounds, and then there are more type of, academic based things or on a university campus. And so making sure that your student is aware of all of those differences and seeing what excites them the most. We've had instances before where a student has even, aged up within our programming and wasn't fully prepared for what those small differences are. So they were expecting it to be like the younger, more lax, fun-based environment. And aging up brings a certain level of challenge as well. And so just having those open discussions, we do an information session every year that is recorded and available to the public. So I'd recommend, watching those. And then obviously we'd love to like answer questions and emails. That's like a bulk of the fall work for us. And so just reaching out and having those conversations.
Yeah, and that I know we're coming up at the end of our hour, but that leads you've all talked about this a little bit, but now I'm going to ask it very directly. How open should we be with our child's diagnoses and struggles when registering for camp? Gabrielle, do you want to start us off with that one?
Yeah, everything that we've said before, like our main goal is for campers to have a positive and successful summer experience. And in order to set them up for that, it starts with transparent conversations. And, we've gotten at it before that um, oftentimes there's a fear of, you know, talking about accommodations or diagnoses your child may have because of, experiences at school or maybe experiences with past summer camps. But like we mentioned, there's always going to be a good fit for out there. And so, in that transparency, sharing more information so that we can also gather some information of like, okay, that makes sense. This is what we can support so that you can make an informed decision on both ends if this is going to be a good fit for your family. And, just being more specific with what those accommodations and things are, because we also don't want them to get there and then a child is giving us this A through Z list of what they typically utilize at home, or they're talking about like these therapeutic techniques that they use in therapy. And it's like, we weren't prepared for that. It would have been really helpful to know so that we could utilize those throughout the week in a positive way to help, like you were saying before, Hui, like to help us not get to that point rather than like, regulate beforehand rather than having to help them through in the moment.
Nicole?
Yeah, it's really important to be transparent. I feel pretty strongly that if yeah, I think it's so much better to wait for the right camp, be really picky about which one, especially for a first experience, because it will be more positive for the child long term to have a successful first camp experience and not have, that weighing on them of maybe they didn't successfully make it through the week, or they did, but it was really tough on them, or they didn't feel accommodated. Uh, I think it's so much better to be transparent and be open and ask questions and like give it your all for the for the first try. And as people are saying in the chat, build in that like recharge time after camp, really scaffold it really well. And then once you've got one down, then it can be time to branch out and take some more risks. But especially for that first time, I recommend being really transparent, really open, and being picky.
Mm-hmm. Hui?
Yeah, I think also just to add that, sometimes sharing diagnoses is not actually as helpful as sharing their particular specific needs that they know, right? If your child, you're telling me this child is autistic, every autistic kids look different, every kid with ADHD look different. So it's actually very important to say, like, hey, like they have these particular needs that I foresee that these problems may rise during camp, and can we do something about it? And I'd also give a tip to parents who are communicating these things with camp. I think it's better if you communicate it as my kids, I foresee that these problems may rise, and let's come to help found a solution together, then provide a list of requests for what the camp needs to do, because the camps is most likely structured very differently from the school. So the camp may not have a occupational therapist on site, and we don't have this one-on-one paraprofessional who can do this. But we have other things, right? We have floating counselor, we have other, pieces, we have this quiet room and all of that. So if you send me a list of like my child needs X, Y, and Z, that sometimes is not as helpful as you telling me what these X, Y, and Z, what problem are they trying to solve? So if you tell me what problem are we trying to solve, we can work together based on what the camp structure and the staff we have available to help you come up with a solution that maybe will also solve that problem, but not exactly as what you requested.
Thank you so very much. And like we are like right at the hour. Perfect timing, everybody. Um, if our parents want to learn more about your particular camps, where should they go? Hui, I'll start with you.
Oh, we have a website, and I'm also going to put my personal email in the chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Nicole?
Yeah, our website is educationaladvancement.org, and you can click on UNASA at the top or programs, then UNASA. or just Google it. It's the only thing called UNASA out there, so it's pretty easy to find. um, and our early bird deadline is today. Our final deadline is not until March 4th. So you have a little bit of time still to get involved. And we just had our webinar last week. So that will be on our website shortly if it's not there already. And UNASA at educationaladvancement.org goes to myself and the coordinator of the program.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabrielle.
I also went ahead and threw our email and website in the chat. That email, it will go directly towards me. Once you're on the website, there's also a phone number if you prefer to just hop on a phone call. And our applications are open now through Friday, March 13th. And like I mentioned, we have weeks for young scholars ages 8 to 11 and then 11 to 13 with some different academic challenges in there. And our courses are really interesting this year. So whenever you have questions, please reach out.
Thank you so very much to all of you. We really appreciate your time. I thought you all had some incredible insights, very helpful for our families. I'm going to say goodbye to all of you and turn it back over to Kaylee. As Kaylee mentioned at the top of the time, parents that are in here, we have time for you to all mix and mingle and talk about amongst yourselves. I know some parents already shared some very helpful insights in the chat. So you learn very well from one another as well. So I will turn it over to Kaylee, but once again, thank you, Hui, Nicole, and Gabrielle. We really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
So glad to be here.
Thank you, Laurel, for the interview, and thank you so much to our panelists. I just got a message that my internet is a bit unstable, so I'm actually going to turn my camera off while I share my screen about breakout rooms. Let me quickly share my screen. There we go. So when we open up the room, we are going to have 3 rooms available, and you'll be able to join the room that fits you the best. If we notice that there's only one person in a breakout room, we might move you to another room so that you actually have a chance to connect with other parents. We don't want to leave you all alone in there since this time is for mingling. So if you're wanting to connect with other parents but aren't sure where to start the conversation, we've put up a prompt to help y'all break the ice a little bit. Our prompt for today is, what's one thing that you are taking from this presentation into camp season? So I am going to go ahead and open up our rooms now. We have rooms for young scholars parents of young scholars in elementary school, middle school, and high school. To access the breakout rooms, you should see 4 squares showing the available rooms. Depending on the device that you are using, you may need to navigate to the More section to locate the breakout rooms. The More section might look like a symbol of 3 dots. Now, just before the half hour, we will come back to this main room. If you would like to exit your breakout room early, you can do so by selecting the Leave Room button, and that will put you back in this main room. If anyone has difficulties getting into a breakout room, you can unmute or send me a message and let me know which room you would like to be placed into. Okay, everyone, feel free to join the rooms now. Have a good mingle, everyone. Welcome back from breakout rooms. Thank you all for joining us. Laurel and I really enjoyed doing this. Just a couple of quick closing items. Please complete the survey that you will be directed to when I close our session. We really do value your feedback, and we use that survey to inform future programming. It's also important to note that we know that your questions don't stop here. You can submit a question to our team 24/7 through our Ask a Family Consultant forum on DMC. I do believe one of my colleagues put that in the chat. Yes, thank you. We also hope to see you at another Family Services virtual event soon. A few of our upcoming sessions include part 2 of our Advocating for the PG Student series, which is going to be on twice exceptionality at school. That session is going to be on February 3rd at 11 a.m. Pacific time, so this same time slot. And then for twice exceptional families, we are also having a specific 2E PCC on February 10th again at this same time slot, 11 a.m. Pacific time. As we noted earlier, you will be able to view a recording of this event on DMC, so look for that within about the next week. Otherwise, that is going to do it for us today. We hope that you have a lovely rest of your day, everyone. Bye-bye.